Childbirth is a ritual that has existed ever since the beginning of time, but has evolved over the course of history. Judith Leavitt, in her piece, Childbirthing in America, conveys that although men entering the birth room and the home-to-hospital transition negatively affected women's power and comfort, women maintained control regardless. Even if the outcomes of their decisions were not successful, they still had the capability of making those choices in the first place. Research and oral histories that we gathered show that births vary depending on the woman's social class and race. By looking at the stories of Mackenzie's American mother, Lenny's Mexican grandmother, and Regina's Filipino grandmother, we will portray the cultural differences between each birth to get a better understanding of how social class and race affect privilege and control in birth.
At 30 years old, my mom gave birth to her first child and my oldest sister, Melissa. 10 years earlier, in 1983, it was her first attempt at pregnancy, and following that was years of failed attempts and heartbreak. Seeing her struggle, doctors opened the doors to in vitro fertilization. This is an assisted reproductive technology that was not available in post-war era. Coming from a privileged white upper-class family, it was easier than most to be introduced to this process. After 6 years and thousands of dollars put into it, my mom needed a break. It only lasted a year until she went back to trying to have a child, because she knew she was meant to be a mom. More attempts failed until one visit turned her life around. She was pregnant with a little girl, her miracle child. If it wasn't for my mom's opportunities that came along with her race and class, I wouldn't have my older sister today.
My Mexican grandmother gave birth to my dad in 1966 in the city of Mexicali. Their family was living in California, but they moved to Mexicali to have my dad. The fact that it would be a cheap birthing process and my grandmother's lack of insurance is what pushed them there. The hospital resources were not as good as the ones in the United States, but my grandmother still had a safe and affordable experience. My grandmother lacked the social knowledge that upper-class mothers had going into the birthing process, which enabled them to choose special doctors and be more aware of the medications that were available. My grandmother didn't even have insurance, limiting her power and opportunities inside the hospital. Moving the birth from the States to just south of the border was a unique choice that portrayed a cultural and working class practice.
My grandpa risked his life by serving the United States Navy in 1958 in order to gain the privileges that came along with it. By sacrificing his safety and putting his life on the line, he provided housing and care for his pregnant wife. My grandparents had the privilege to use the Naval Base Hospital as a place to give birth to my mom. Since my mom's side of the family was upper class and a part of the U.S.'s organization, my grandmother was flown out to give birth in their hospital without charge. Her birth was special, and in a way very privileged, because the majority of families in the Philippines can't afford a doctor, so they stayed home and gave birth alongside their midwives. Having midwives present at the birth was a very common practice before the regularity of hospitalized births. My family wasn't like the other families, demonstrating the diversity in birth experiences that a family could have.
Although our families all come from different cultural backgrounds, we know that each woman faced challenges along the way and had choices on how to go about their child labor.
Each of our families had opportunities, some more than others, whether they were privileged and had to physically create a child, or potentially sacrifice their life, or even moved across the border.
Each of our parents and grandparents enacted their own agency, choosing to have control over their birth experiences.
It is an amazing thing to know that all our families have come a long way to get us where we are.
Even though our moms and grandmothers experienced diverse births and had to overcome different struggles, they all persevered, giving our moms and us the best opportunities for a better life.